Drop a like and do share. Leave your comments and do not forget to subscribe for more videos.
Hello and welcome to Edupedia World.
Welcome back and thank you very much for joining me for part 2 of our session on goods receipt processes. In part 1, we looked briefly at the structure of the warehouse management module. We looked at the different organizational units that are involved that make up our warehouse management structure. And now this gives us a good basis to proceed and look at the actual processes that are involved in warehouse management. And to begin with, we're going to start by looking at goods receipts processes. So as we zero in on goods receipts, I'm going to firstly introduce the purchasing cycle, which consists, of course, of various documents such as the purchase requisition, the request for quotation, the purchase order, etc. We're going to look at all the documents that are involved in the purchasing cycle and the function that they play. Secondly, we're also going to look at goods receipt postings. We're going to look at how exactly they're used in our process and the function that they serve. We'll also look at transfer orders. We'll explain how transfer orders are used, who uses them, and of course the function, the role that they play in the system. And finally, we're going to look at the role that inbound deliveries play in the system. Now, firstly, we'll take a look at the purchasing cycle or the process flow that is involved in a typical purchasing process, a procurement process within an organization. First of all, we have what we call a purchase requisition, which is also a document that we find in SAP. Now, a purchase requisition basically serves as a communication from a department, for example, within an organization that requires particular goods or services to be purchased, especially externally, meaning from outside the organization. And so what a purchase requisition does is it contains the fine details of the goods or services that the department wants to procure. And from this purchase requisition, an organization then generates what we call, which is the second document, a request for quotation, or otherwise abbreviated as RFQ. And what the RFQ contains, or the function that the RFQ serves, is that it communicates now to potential vendors the nature of the products, the services, the goods that are required by the purchasing organization. So first we have the purchasing requisition, which serves as an internal communication. And then now we have the request for quotations that serves as an external communication. So our purchase requisition is mainly for internal communication of the materials that we need, the services that we need. And then we have our RFQ, the request for quotation, which serves as an external communication for the products, the goods, or the services that we need to procure. Now, third is our quotation. Now, this is the actual quotation that our organization receives from vendors after they have received our request for quotation. So this quotation, in a way, is a response to our request for quotation. What happens many times is that after issuing an RFQ, an organization can receive multiple quotations from different vendors, and the system will allow you, or it will help you to choose the winning quotation or the best quotation in terms of price or value, meaning the system allows you to sift through the different quotations that you get and choose the best quotation. Now, in response to this quotation that we receive from our vendor, we can then create a purchase order. It refers to this quotation, but it can also refer directly to an RFQ. So once we receive our quotation and we select the quotation that we see best fitting from our vendors, we then create a purchase order. Now, the purchase order is the document that contains all the key information surrounding the actual order. And on this purchase order, we have very key information such as the actual material that we're ordering, the destination of the material, the vendor who's supplying the material, and so on and so forth. We'll probably look at a sample of that later on in this presentation. So the purchase order serves as I'll call it principal document in this cycle. Naturally, after creating our purchase order, we would expect our vendors to start processing our delivery, and we expect to receive our goods, the goods that we have ordered. So the next step then becomes the goods receipt. The goods receipt, basically, we're going to get in depth. We're going to look at this in depth in our next slide. But the goods receipt represents the phase in which we are processing an acknowledgement of receipt for the goods that we have ordered. And the goods receipt is also going to affect our stock values, our stock quantities, and so on and so forth. We'll look at that in greater detail in the next slide. The next step is going to be the invoice verification phase, in which invoices that are entered into the system, which refer either to a purchase order or to a delivery. Now, this I'm going to explain when we get in depth into our goods receipts, because there are two types of goods receipts. So we have invoices that either refer to a purchase order or to a delivery. Now, the purpose of this is it allows us to compare the values that we find in the invoice to those in the preceding document. Whether it's preceded by a purchase order, the invoice may be preceded by a purchase order, a delivery. And now we are able to compare the values that we find in the invoice with those in these preceding documents. And now we can use this as a control to accuracy to make sure that we don't have any differences in our quantities and prices in the invoice against the preceding documents. This is basically just a way of controlling and making sure that we don't have any differences in what we have ordered and what we are receiving. And if we do find any differences, this is the time to note that down and address it. The final step of this process, of course, is payment processing, which is handled mainly by the accounting department, where we basically come to terms with and calculate what we owe to our vendors and how much we are liable to our vendors. So this basically sums up the purchasing cycle, the purchasing process flow. And now we want to take this into the next phase, which is looking at the goods receipt process, the actual goods receipt process, because there are actually two types or two ways that a goods receipt can be handled. And now we're going to look at that in depth, and we're going to compare and contrast these two methods for clarity's sake. So moving on to the goods receipt process, we need to note that there are two distinct types of goods receipt processes. Now, the first one is in which we have a goods receipt for a purchase order with subsequent put away. Note the order. We have a purchase order. We perform a goods receipt for that purchase order, and then we have subsequent put away. That's the first type. Now, the second type is where we have an inbound delivery for a purchase order, put away for the inbound delivery, and a subsequent goods receipt posting for the inbound delivery. So just to go slowly and get the order, in our second type, we have a purchase order, and we create an inbound delivery for the purchase order. After this, we have put away for the inbound delivery. And finally, we have a subsequent goods receipt posting for the inbound delivery. So now the difference between these two is with the first one, we have absolutely no inbound delivery. We don't have that document. It's actually a document in the system called an inbound delivery. And in the first type, we don't have an inbound delivery. But with the second type, we create an inbound delivery with reference to the purchase order. And then from this inbound delivery, we then later on create a goods receipt posting. But this is after we have done a put away for that inbound delivery, meaning that we have this inbound delivery, goods are first put away before we post a goods receipt posting. Now, a goods receipt posting, just to clarify, when we post a goods receipt, we are actually, with effect, updating our stock levels. A material document is created in the system, and we are updating our stock levels. An accounting document is also created in the system when we post our goods receipt, and we are also updating our stock levels not only on a value basis but on a quantity basis. So posting goods receipt means that we have updated our system on both a value and a quantity basis. A material document and an accounting document are created every time we post a goods receipt. So in the first type of goods receipt, we first have a purchase order, and then we post a goods receipt for that purchase order, and then we put away those goods into storage. So you'll notice that our values, our quantities have been updated before the stock has actually been put away into storage. But with the second type of goods receipt, we have a purchase order from which we create an inbound delivery, and then we put away the stock into storage. Only after that do we then post our goods receipt, meaning that our goods receipt is posted after our stock levels have been replenished, because the goods have already been put away when our goods receipt is posted. Now, there's a benefit to this second method, where we post our goods receipt after putting away the stock into storage. Because with the first method, you'll notice that we have a purchase order, and then we post our goods receipt, and then finally we put the goods away in our subsequent put away. So, take for example, in a typical organizational setup, we have our purchase order, and we have created a goods receipt, meaning that the system, our SAP system in inventory management, is already telling our sales employees that we have received more stock in our storage locations. Meaning that if a customer were to come in and make an order, the system would assume that these goods are already in stock because the goods receipt has been posted, because we have posted a goods receipt. But remember, we have not yet performed our subsequent put away. We have not performed our put away yet, meaning the goods are still are not yet in storage. So a customer could come and place an order. Perhaps it's a rush order or a cash sale where someone immediately collects their goods. And we would find that the system would tell us that the goods are available, but when we actually go to storage, because the goods have not yet been put away, we would not find anything in storage. So that's the weakness of using the first method, where we just post our goods receipt directly from a purchase order and then put away the goods finally. But with the second method, where we have our purchase order, we create an inbound delivery with reference to that purchase order, and then perform put away for that inbound delivery before finally posting goods receipt. This means that the system will only give a very accurate picture of what's happening in our storage locations. When a customer comes to place an order, the system is only going to inform the sales employee of stock that is actually situated and stored in our actual storage locations. So there you have a difference between our first goods receipt method and our second goods receipt method. The first one doesn't include an inbound delivery and will perform a goods receipt before actually performing put away, whereas the second one contains an inbound delivery and will prioritize the put away before the actual goods receipt posting. So just to brush over some key details in our goods receipt phase, our goods receipt step, our goods receipt posting. The goods receipt document will obtain details for inventory management from the purchase order. The purchase order naturally will contain details such as the receiving plant, who is receiving the goods, where the goods are going to go, the storage location, etc. And so when performing a goods receipt posting, the system is going to obtain those details from the purchase order and apply them, action them when we are posting a goods receipt. the system is also going to determine what we call our movement type from the purchase order. The movement type basically is going to be used to control whether the goods are going to go directly into a unrestricted use storage location, blocked amongst blocked stock, quality assurance, etc. Basically, there are different categories of stock, different stock types that we have in the system, and movement types will determine where exactly particular stock that we are receiving is going to wind up, what stock type the system is going to classify the received goods as. For example, maybe when the organization is going to be procuring certain goods, the goods are not exactly going to be sold immediately, but maybe they have to go through a quality assurance program. And so when these goods are posted in our goods receipt phase, they are not going to be made immediately available for sale to the sales department via sales and distribution, but they are going to be parked in a quality assurance stock type. And once this stock has gone through our quality assurance program, then it can be moved into what we call unrestricted use stock. Unrestricted use stock can be used for sales, for production, for whatsoever process the stock or the materials are required for. So basically, movement types control what stock type or where goods are going to wind up. Your movement type is going to determine whether your goods are going to wind up as blocked stock, whether your goods receipts are going to wind up in as quality assurance stock, or whether they're going to be unrestricted and readily or immediately available for sale. And so once we post our goods receipts, our material stock is going to be recorded in the material document. Material stock increases are all going to be recorded in the material document, which is generated at post goods receipt. And we will also have value-based changes, which are going to be documented in accounting documents. So for every goods receipt posting, there are two documents that are going to be created, namely a material document, which is going to record stock increases in inventory management, and we're also going to have accounting documents, which are going to record value-based changes for accounting purposes. Now, thus far, the processes that we've looked at, the purchasing processes that we've looked at, that is starting right from the purchasing requisition right through to the goods receipt, they're sufficient from a materials management / inventory management perspective. But once we have warehouse managed storage locations, the process goes a little longer, a few steps longer. What happens is, once the goods receipt is created, the system not only generates a material and accounting document, but it goes on to generate what we call a transfer requirement. Now, from the earlier sessions that we've had, we established that with warehouse management, unlike inventory management, we were able to also take into account the actual location of goods that we are storing in our storage bins. Whereas in inventory management, we are only focused on a quantity perspective, meaning that we're just focusing on the quantities that are stored in our different storage locations. But once a storage location is warehouse managed, meaning that we're going to start using storage bins, we are now able to actually take into account, in addition, the actual location of particular goods. So, on this wise, the system, in addition to the material document and the accounting document, goes on to generate what we call a transfer requirement. Now, a transfer requirement is nothing more than a basis for subsequent put away. It is the basis for planning subsequent put away. And based on this transfer requirement, we come up with our transfer order, which is now the actual document that is used to perform put away. It's a type of instruction for a warehouse employee, and it's created with reference to the transfer requirement. So, at the end of the process, of this entire process, it's expected that the warehouse employee confirms the actual order. Well, that is if it's set up in that way in customizing. But a warehouse employee must confirm a transfer order after having put away the goods. to the actual storage bin or the actual location that is stipulated in the transfer order. So when we're using materials management and inventory management, our goods receipt is only going to generate a material document and an accounting document. But once we are using warehouse managed storage locations, the system is going to go on to generate a transfer requirement, which will also then give rise to a transfer order. So these processes, right from the purchasing requisition, right through to the goods receipt and the resulting documents under the goods receipt, such as the material document, the accounting document, transfer orders, transfer requirements. These are basically what constitute the procurement cycle or the purchasing process. In the next video, the next session, which is going to be the last of this 3-part session on goods receipts, we're going to bring everything together. We're going to look at the inbound delivery, the structure of the inbound delivery, its function, and how it contributes to this entire process. We're also going to get into detail on put-away processes using transfer orders.
Thank you for watching Edupedia World. Stay tuned for more videos.